Hello, everyone. Welcome to our new podcast. We haven't settled an official name, but I guess it could be the EV Nomad podcast. What do you think of that, babe? Sounds good? It would line up together with the name of our channel and our theme overall. So, initial introductions, I'm Tony.
And I'm Sean, or Tracy. I go by both. Full name, Sean Treese.
Different ways to abbreviate her name. And we've started this channel to document upcoming adventure that we're going on that we think might be the greatest adventure in our lives. We're looking forward to it. We hope, yeah. And to get some background, I think neither of us really had a ton of experience camping as children. We had some childhood experiences, right? You were telling me a little bit about that.
Yeah, just going camping with my dad. Nothing like major, mainly. He's in a motorcycle club, and every so often they go out to the man-made rivers and take their RVs and barbecue and those sorts of things, but definitely no kind of like roughing it where we're pitching a tent and all that sort of stuff.
I can remember maybe 2 or 3 tent camping experiences that I went with my parents as a child. And then I think there was one other tent camping experience that I went on like in school as part of like a school club. But other than that, didn't really do a lot of it. But when we started dating, some of our first dates together were these little day hikes. I think that was the first. You're laughing because you're remembering, was it Mount San Jacinto?
Yeah, no, I'm laughing because the story I told you yesterday. So we were camping, and I was just telling him that when we first started dating, hiking, I used to hold my breath or like try to breathe very low so he wouldn't see how out of breath I was, because I was trying to make an impression, obviously. So that's why I'm just chuckling thinking about the early days.
Yeah, it's funny. So yeah, we did those trips. I think we did one camping, or we tried to camp once in my old Toyota Tundra pickup truck, where we had
windy.
Yeah, we had this tent and we couldn't figure out how to put it up. So then we just tried to sleep in the camp bed or the truck bed, but that was like too cold.
Horrible.
Well, I mean, I guess I'd say I did have some experiences camping in my truck bed when I was in college, where I didn't even have a tent. I just rolled out my sleeping bag in my truck bed, and those were cool too. But where the camping and adventuring really took off for us was when we got our Model Y back in 2021. Mm-hmm. And the camp mode in the Model Y, and basically any EV, and this Rivian too, just makes for some really exciting and comfortable car camping experiences, particularly in winter. I mean, we really like going on winter trips.
We do.
You're going to say something, babe?
Well, no, I was just going to say it's perfect because for someone who runs both hot and cold, don't ask me, it doesn't make sense, but it works for me. Having something that's temperature control is amazing, because no matter what the temperature is outside or even what I'm feeling, it's easy to kind of tinker with it and get the perfect kind of, what's that called?
Yeah, perfect temperature. And we drove 95,000 miles on our Model Y in about 3.5 years. We've gone on like a dozen different road trips, which had a fair mix of car camping and Airbnb / hoteling. The biggest one was when we got married. We went on a trip for 4 weeks where we got married, which is amazing. And that was also like a winter camping trip. We really put car camp mode in the Model Y to the test in that trip.
We did, and I would say that would be the first time that we really did a lot of cold. It's funny because when we got married, we did what's called a venture elopement. I don't know if they're still popular, but they were definitely popular during kind of COVID era, where you would link up with someone who's doing this, and they would say oh, where do you want to go? And it's mostly for people who outdoor the things such as that, and we're we just want snow.
I feel like it'd also be popular for anyone who, or any of those couples who feel weird about large gatherings, or because there's a lot of what at least what's portrayed in media and in movies and stuff, all the anxieties around planning for weddings, all the costs associated with it. You kind of sidestep that when you do an elopement.
Well, definitely, but typical elopements, when you think about it, it's oh, you go down to the courthouse or something along those lines.
True,
when we were looking into it, because both of us were we don't want the pomp and ceremony. We're definitely not people where we attention ourselves, which is ironic since we're doing this. But so we're what do we want to do? Mixing that all up with outdoors, trying to get more into hiking and all that sort of stuff, and we just did a little bit of a Google. We came across Knots in the Pine, which turned out to be amazing.
Yeah, those were our guides.
Yeah, our
for
guides.
This adventure elopement.
Were amazing for that, and they literally made it so easy for us. They're like, "What do you want?" Because we're like, "Oh no," and we're like, "We just want snow, tons of snow." And they're like, "Okay, well, what's your hiking experience? Have you been in snow before?" They're amazing to the point where they would say like, "Okay, if you've never really done snow, like these are the different layers. Like you need a mid layer, you need this, you need wicking socks."
We wanted snow and we wanted a hot spring.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Snow and hot spring,
That's
which
important.
led to a hot spring in Idaho.
Yep.
So yeah, on that 4-week trip, the furthest out we got was a hot spring in northern Idaho in December, middle of December, and that's where we got married. And we spent 4 weeks on the road in our Model Y there, and stopped in Portland, Boise, the Grand Canyon, the Redwoods, Big Sur on the way back down.
Yeah, we traveled along the coast on the way back, and I feel like that's really what kicked off kind of our love for this, like car camping and all that sort of stuff, because basically, at least in my mind, it was like, if we can do that, then we can do it. Like, if we can not drive each other crazy and be in the snow driving for the first time and also doing car camping, then like the sky's the limits a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And other highlights from our dozens of trips, there was like Yellowstone. We went to Yellowstone, West Yellowstone in the winter. I think it was like early February. Our hosts must have thought we were so crazy because we were the only people who were car camping at the only RV park that was open in this town. And judging from the number of people who were there in February in winter, where it got down to like below zero, I can only imagine how crazy Yellowstone must be in the summer.
Oh yeah.
I mean, maybe like sometime in the future, we'll make time to go to Yellowstone in the summer because it'll be a completely different experience.
I'm dreading it though.
The crowds, right?
Yeah.
But there in the winter, we rode on snowmobiles, saw bison and snow foxes.
I was just gonna say the cute fox.
Yeah, that fox was a celebrity. Like at the end of the trip, one of the guides spotted a snow fox in the distance. So then the snowmobiles pulled over, and then all the other snowmobiles. Before you know it, there's a line of like 40 snowmobiles with everyone getting off the snowmobiles to
like different groups.
Get their cameras out and take a picture of this one little snow fox. But that was an awesome adventure. Another thing made possible by Camp Mode in the Model Y. And then I'd say like a warm season adventure we did was Paso Robles. Paso Robles, stayed at a hip camp with a vineyard hip camp, and I think it got up to like 105 on some of those days. At least it peaked at 105. But there are places where it gets to 100 and it stays 100, like Palm Springs, and then there are places like that where it gets to 100 but then it cools off pretty rapidly. So by the late evening, it's pretty cozy.
Yeah.
It was nice and comfortable, like at sundown.
At sundown, but definitely not during the day, because I will say for that is like through the years, this is one of the things that we've learned, like what are the different equipments that we need to be comfortable when we're just kind of like at the campsite or at the hip campsite. And that was one of the times where we did not have a tent. So we definitely learned very quickly how miserable it can be during like prime day hot, like heat. And how uncomfortable it gets.
And that's something that's kind of funny to think about, because we were so dialed into car camping that it wasn't until we had been doing it for like a year and a half or so that the thought occurred to us, like, oh, what if we got a tent? Yeah. Like when most people, I think they start with tent camping and then go to car camping, we were like the other way around. But anyway, those adventures, which you did over 3.5 years, really inspired us, left us wanting to do more. And that's why we're here in this R1S and on this YouTube channel with you folks watching. We haven't. I mean, first and foremost, our audience is us in the future, right? Yeah. Like we're just documenting our lives and what we think will be one of the coolest adventures of our lives. And but we got this dream of traveling the country and doing that full time, living out of a vehicle full time, traveling the country full time. It's doable in the Model Y. It's for sure doable if you're a single person. In fact, there are a lot of great YouTubers, people who are like inspirations to me personally, who are doing that. But as a couple and knowing ourselves and
mainly knowing myself,
like the space we needed, it would be very difficult. And that's ultimately why we chose to upgrade here to this R1S that we're in now. And you know.
And I think specifically like on our trips, one of the things that at least I know it really irritated me was jigsawing everything. So while the Model Y was like really good in terms of like we've talked about like the climate control, we've talked about like being able to sleep in here because you can put like a twin bed kind of size equivalent in here, so like obviously you can sleep in it. But once you really start getting into like having more stuff, especially if you're going to be on the road for a long time, like our month trip, that's what we really started to learn. Like, okay, like we would have to take stuff from the back to the front and then move things around. And especially for this upcoming trip that we want to do less of that. And two, we want to make it so that our bedding in itself is just out all the time. So no matter what type of situation we're in, whether it's like stealth camping in urban areas or things like that, we can just crawl in the back. We don't have to worry about like unfolding the bed, moving things around.
That's the big challenge with something like the Model Y. It's like, you know, I kind of see it in general. There's sort of three categories of car camping, right? There's like car camping in urban situations, or I guess you'd say like stealth camping, right? Then there's campground camping, and then there's boondocking. And for each of those, you need slightly different equipments. So if you want to be capable in all three of those situations, you really need to like kind of fine tune and balance different types of gear that you get. But the biggest one is that if you're doing like stealth, any kind of stealth camping, or in like an urban setting in a city, whatever, you can't have that much stuff in the back. Is what Tracy was saying. Because if you have a ton of stuff in the back, then when you go back there to try and sleep, where does that all go? It can only come out if you're at a secured campsite, which you won't always be. So that's the biggest reason why we decided to get to this larger vehicle, and also just the feeling of a little more space. And there are other features that we'll talk about more so in the future.
I was just thinking that you definitely had to be a little bit bendy too, in terms of kind of like
moving around in the Model Y.
Where you're kind of like hunched over a lot, where you're like, okay, not fully seated up, but like, okay, let me like, you know, get into the back here or change a little bit before we get out in the morning. So it was a little bit more limiting in that way, versus here where, you know, obviously you're not sitting all the way up, especially the way that we have things kitted out here, but it's still much more space. So it doesn't feel as if you're like, let me tweak this way and like contort this way. It's
the biggest difference is that in the Model Y, if you can either be set up to drive it, or you can be set up to sleep in it. You can't be set up to do both. In the R1S, you can be set up to do both. You don't have to move your driver's seat forward in order to have enough room to sleep in the back. And that's like the biggest difference.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I know that this is not the video for this, but I'm just gonna say very quickly, one of my pet peeves also with the Model Y, the Rivian has it too, but it's not as problematic because of the space, is that when you open your driver's door, it automatically goes back to your preferred seating for whatever driver profile you're on. So for the Model Y, it would constantly move, so then it would squish up our bedding and things such as that. Whereas here, even if the driver's seat moves based off of the profile setting, there's so much space back there that it doesn't interfere with our bedding, so it doesn't become like contorted or whatever the case may be. So it's just like it's just bigger, and it's better for that reason.
So this gets us into like why we're doing this now, which is you know, student loans been paid. And we basically have dreamed of this for years, and we saved up the money to do so. And we'll be able to sustain this for at least 6 months, starting in a couple of months. So we're like 45 days out from starting our adventure, and then we're basically going to go from July until Christmas, you know? And this YouTube channel ultimately, like I said before, is first and foremost documenting our journey. So it's made for us in the future to look back and like have retrospectives. Obviously, if there's anyone out there who finds this interesting and watches this, like, thank you. Please remember to like and subscribe.
Oh yeah, we have to learn how to say that, right?
Yeah, and you know, we're documenting our choices and our equipment and setups, and sharing what we learn so that it can be maximally useful to anyone else who wants to do this. Because I personally think that this is a lifestyle choice it's becoming more and more popular. I think it really surged during the pandemic, but as technology allows things to get smaller, like we see more and more miniaturization, and we see more batteries and electrification with electric vehicles, it just like the pain points that you would have had 10 years ago, 15, 20, 30 years ago to like living on the road permanently are getting easier and easier. And I think more people are going to opt into it, especially with also like work, the types of things people do for work evolving, and having satellite internet access everywhere. You know, like remote work becomes a lot more feasible.
Yeah, because I think we were talking about this in terms of like, I don't know how many years ago, but like, you know, the common thing probably would be like if you're like a, what is that called? Like a on-the-spot photographer. That's not what that's called. But if you go out, do nature shots, or you kind of like go to different places, typical time that you might be sleeping in your car, or if you're like write for blogs, or you're kind of like writing freelance or something along those lines, then you can do this. But now, and like more and more because of COVID and teleworking and all that sort of stuff, there's so many options now for remote work, not just for those kind of like creative jobs, but like across the board for everything.
Yeah, you can be a creative, you can be a consultant, you like they're traveling sales reps, like having come from the ag industry, you know, people who do ag sales of like ag equipment or ag inputs that would cover like a large service area, and yeah. Even like accounting and bookkeeping stuff you can do remotely.
Our insurance, because we were looking into that too randomly, because, you know, with us doing this, like we said, we can only do this for about 6 months based off of kind of like a combination of still some work that we can do remotely and savings. So obviously looking into like what are some other ways to kind of sustain this. And one thing that we came across was, I can't remember the company, but it's like outdoors type of company. I just was curious to see what type of like jobs they were offering, and like just for membership or like insurance, they had a remote job for that company. So I was like, oh, that's cool. So yeah, there's lots and lots of different types of remote work now.
Yeah. So that gets us into our second segment, roughly, which is about the trip that we just did. We went to Idyllwild. Never been to Idyllwild before. It's amazing. Highly recommend going to Idyllwild in general to anyone out there. And a big part of this is because we're testing out new gear that we acquired for our 6-month trip. I mean, we've got a month and a half to go. It's like 45 days until the lease is up in our apartment. Just kind of crazy to think about. So we got to make sure that different equipments, different setups that we've got, like make sense and work, and is as intuitive as we thought it was in theory, in practice. And that's what this trip to Idyllwild was about. And this is also us testing out our new membership with an organization called Thousand Trails. And Thousand Trails is basically an RV, it's like an RV parking or RV camping and campground club. They have this membership where for about $600 a year, you can stay at their campsites in one region for free. And you can stay for up to 14 days. But once you've been there for more than 4 days, you have to be out of their system for 7 days. So when you put it all together, if you're like living in an RV or living in a car in like a camping type situation, you can be 14 days in, 7 days out. It roughly translates to 21 days a month you can stay for free at their campgrounds. So we went to their campground, which is Thousand Trails Idyllwild, which I really enjoyed. It's a really beautiful place.
I mean, you know, that's like catnip for me in terms of like mountains, lots of
forest,
trees, all of that sort of stuff.
Big old pine trees, big cedars, and you know, like there were hiking trails all around it. I mean, there was so much to see just going around in the park in terms of like the beautiful trees in there, because we rode our bikes around there. But
and
we went on this
hills
hike
too internally, so it's like you can get a good exercise just walking around, just kind of like the Thousand Trails property on its own, versus actually going out to the official kind of trails that most. But
we did go out on an official trail. We went on this hike that we found on All Trails, which All Trails is separate from Thousand Trails. So Thousand Trails is one company. All Trails is an app for identifying hiking trails. And this hiking trail that we did,
I don't know if it was an official trail.
Yeah, it's definitely not maintained by the Forest Service, put it that. So this trail, I think like one of the employees from the Thousand Trails RV park must have made it. I mean, they're certainly the ones who maintain it, but we were going on that trail. Every once in a while we would see like a cairn, a stack of rocks, a few logs that were placed strategically that suggests where you're supposed to go. But there were many times where we were like not sure if we were even on the trail at all, because it's so lightly trafficked.
Or if it was safe to cross certain places.
And it was super steep. You know, we went up and down 1,000 feet over a course of I mean, All Trails claims it was a 3.8 mile round like loop. It felt like more like 5 miles or 6 miles or something.
Well, we were definitely doing the whole hike for over 3 hours, so there's that.
Yeah, over 3 hours, and it was beautiful. I felt really accomplished afterwards.
I mean, I did too, as my body was spasming and seizing, but I did too.
So that hike was awesome. Another big thing that we wanted to get done on this trip is this was the first trip where we took our new Lectric bikes.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the Lectric XP4 folding electric bikes, and like I said, this is the first time we brought those bikes with us in the Rivian. You can kind of see them a little bit behind Tracy folded up. The way we're carrying them now is not how we're going to carry them on our long road trip. Not at all.
We did not think we were going to carry it that way for this trip either.
Yeah. So
we audibled.
But we'll get into it first in terms of like why we chose e-bikes, why we're traveling with e-bikes. Besides it being on theme for an electric Nomad to have an electric car and an electric bike. But what would you say, babe, if people were to ask, what's the story with the e-bikes for us?
Well, I mean, I know there's one story for you, so I could tell that story, but I just, I've been wanting to get more into biking and all that sort of stuff, but like primarily for us in terms of like what we want to use them for the trip itself is, I don't want to say like we're like cheap, because we're not cheap all the time, but when it comes to like making the most of like getting cheap charging, we do want to do that as much as possible.
Like you said, that's more a thing for me.
Yeah.
I
was trying to be nice.
As an EV owner, for me personally, one of my favorite little mini games in owning an EV is finding the cheapest possible charging. Like free level 2 chargers. Oh my god, I love them. I love free level 2 chargers, and towns that have free level 2 chargers, I love the town even more just for having the free level 2 charger. Like I will, like there are these towns, when we went on our road trip, we went through these different towns in Colorado and in Idaho that had free level 2 charging. And I'm not certain that those towns still have them free, but back in 2021 they were free, and I still think very highly of Ketchum for its free level 2 chargers. I still think very highly of Ridgeway.
About Ketchum.
Ridgeway, beautiful town, amazing hot springs in Ridgeway, Colorado. Definitely go check it out if you're ever out there. But anyways, if you have like a multimodal way of getting around in terms of you have your EV and you have your bikes, then those free level 2 chargers become so much more valuable, because you can pull up to your free level 2 charger, plug in, then take your e-bikes off and ride around and explore the town on e-bike. And that's what attracted me personally, and I think Tracy likes that too. Well, we've enjoyed really riding around on these bikes. They're super fun.
They're very fun, and I guess for me, it's you've been talking about like, oh, what about if we did like a bike tour or something along those lines and really do this kind of thing? I'm like, well, obviously I'm not doing that on a regular bike. So for me, selfishly, I'm like, if we do an e-bike, then that's something that like, oh, I can consider it, maybe, possibly.
I mean, some of the cities that we're going to go to on this trip is like Denver, Missoula, Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, Toronto. These, going to these cities and then driving around will be one thing, but then to actually like be on the ground in bikes, riding around them, I think you're going to we'll get an entirely different experience. So that covers why e-bikes, and we ultimately settled on the XP4s and Lectric after looking at a bunch of different brands because they're the most popular e-bike in the country, and they have a lot of like shops that are willing to work on them and repair them.
That's what I was going to say. It's not just that they're popular, so we weren't just like, oh, lots of people have them, so we must get that bike. It was more along the lines of like, if anything goes wrong with the bike itself, where do we get it repaired? And when we were going to, I was going to say a lot of bike shops, but we've only been to like 2. But when we talked to kind of like the bike shop kind of like clerks, and they were like, yeah, the problem with like folding e-bikes is because like there's such specialty kind of parts. If something goes wrong with one of them, there's not a lot of like repair shops that are comfortable enough to do that versus with Lectric, because it's so common, it's so popular, all that sort of stuff. It's more likely that we'll have the opportunity to be able to go somewhere and get it repaired more easily.
And they advertise themselves that they have, I think they said they had over 500 different shops across the country that are officially partnered with them for repairs and maintenance and stuff. So that gets to that. But you know, as you see, we carried them a funky way here that we don't intend to. Like we folded them up and put them in the car, which you can very well do that. That is the nice thing of folding bikes. But our original idea, my original idea with getting the folding bikes is that we have a cargo basket, like a hitch-mounted cargo basket that we've had for a year or two now, and we always used it with the Model Y. So in part of like reusing some of the existing equipment that we had, moving things from our Model Y car camping setup to this R1S, I thought, oh, if we get a folding e-bikes, we can put these folding e-bikes in our existing cargo rack to carry them around on the back. And that's ultimately not going to work out, sadly, because it's just,
that was a challenge trying to even, like, what are those called? The straps.
Oh yeah, because in order to make it work, we would have to fold the bikes, then put it onto the hitch rack
in a perfect kind of like, you know, position so that it doesn't fall over or like scratch any of our lights or like be on the...
And then put ratchet straps through it. And then after you put the ratchet straps through it to put it on tension so it doesn't go anywhere, then you would put the bike lock through it so that no one would take them, right?
A lot.
And after trying to do that like 3 times, we realized like if it's this big of an operation to get access to our bikes, to get them off or to get them off and on, then it'll be a pain point for actually using it.
Well, especially because of the kind of like the scenario we just talked about, like our main kind of like use case for them is going to be like parking the Rivian at a charging station and then hopping on the bikes and just like touring places and then putting it back on.
Touring town, exploring Chicago, exploring Atlanta, exploring, you know, Missoula.
Whatever, like wherever we are. Yeah. But that becomes a lot harder if we're doing this whole setup, because if it's going to take forever and we're going to get frustrated trying to do it, then that defeats the purpose.
Potentially scratch the bike or like break our lights or the little screen.
Or God forbid that if like we don't ratchet it the right way and they fall, then we're out like lots of money.
And liability. Yeah. So yeah, ultimately that's why we had to carry it this way on this trip. And we're going to have to upgrade to like a purpose-built bike rack. Yeah. And we're looking into that now for a long road trip.
Before we leave this topic, though, I did want to say that is going to be something is a little bit more something we didn't plan for, because the whole reason why we got the folding bikes is because we wanted to put them on the rack. Because if we were going to think about a traditional bike rack, then we would have got non-folding bikes.
Like a fixed frame.
Yeah, because the problem with the folding bikes, if you don't know, is that they're super heavy. So even like the frames that we're looking at right now that we got like recommendations from one of the folks out in Palm Springs, is there's a weight capacity limit of like 60. And our bikes without the battery is like 67,
65, 67.
Or something like that. Yeah. So even with that, he says it's probably within the safety kind of range, but that's what we have to consider because we got the folding bike. So if we would have known that we would have had to upgrade anyway to a regular bike rack, then we would have had a lot of different options to explore versus kind of only looking at folding.
It seems like in general, folding e-bikes versus fixed frame e-bikes, if it's comparable models, the folding e-bike will be about 15 pounds heavier. Yeah. It's my guess. But, you know, all that said, I still think that the fact that these Lectric XP4s can fold will have some usefulness in the future in other spaces.
Yeah, like if we're like ever rent another place or something along those lines, it makes it easy enough to kind of like bring it inside or something along those lines and take a small amount of space. So yeah, definitely. I don't think it I was going to say a saying that I do not like. Do not burn the house down just to kill a spider. Let's say it that way. So yeah, I definitely don't think it's something that we just throw away whole hog, but it is definitely something that if we would have known that we were going to need bike racks, that we could have thought about it a little bit differently. That's all. Yeah.
So I guess that's a takeaway for you folks at home who are thinking about e-bikes, you know, and this is another thing that the knowledgeable bicycle salesman / repairman mentioned. Is like everybody is looking at these folding bikes and has tons of different ideas of where they can put these folding bikes because they fold. But just because in theory you can, doesn't mean you always will want to. So sometimes it might just be better to just get a traditional fixed frame bike and a regular bike rack.
Yeah. No need to be creative if you don't have to, put it that way.
Yeah. So, but, you know, fortunately, the hitch receiver on this R1S can carry a ton of weight. I think carry up to 800 pounds. So there shouldn't be any challenges with putting these two hefty Lectric bikes on a dedicated bike rack on the back. And that's another way that we're going to get around as nomads. And as we look into the future of where we're going, where we're headed, I mean, I think we've already established in the talk that where we're at now is we're about 42 days away from our departure date, which is like 3 days before our lease runs out in our apartment. So we've got 42 more days to dial in what our setup is. And that includes everything from like cooking equipment that you're gonna bring, where you store your food, where and how you store your food, sleeping arrangements, what kind of tents and like temporary structures we would bring.
Well, also
because right
chairs.
now, tents and chairs, because we have like a tent that attaches to the vehicle called the SUV tent, which is amazing. It's like, wish we had gotten it sooner. But we also want to have a screen house that would be a lot more open and is faster to set up and put down, and is much more of like a lounging around temporary structure. It's the sort of thing that you would bring with you to the beach or to the park and set up, and it's so easy to set up that you wouldn't feel any way about putting it up for like 2 or 3 hours and then packing it away. But we don't have that yet, so we got to figure out like which one we would get and if we can make it fit in our rooftop storage box.
It's space.
Yeah, space. I mean,
so
like,
that's why I mentioned the chairs, because one of the things that we have to consider is right now we have these things called hammock chairs, and they're big. And so we have to figure out, is like that's something that we actually want to bring along with us, or is that something that we're going to leave, and then that might free up some space for the actual screen tent.
Yep. Or other things that go up in the roof box, because we removed our middle row and built a platform in order to have more cargo space. And you can look at the videos that we've put out about that elsewhere on the channel. Award-winning videos, they're fantastic. They basically created a frunk load of storage, which is awesome. But it's stuff like that we're gonna have to dial in over the next 42 days before we leave. And you know, we're also going to be making more videos for ourselves, for you guys. And I would say that there are 3 different types of videos, for the most part, 3 archetypes of videos. There's gear testing and setup guides, which is just going to be sharing like practical tips about, you know, what pieces of equipment work for us or how to use them in this like nomadic lifestyle type situation that we're preparing for. We're going to have videos of our particular excursions and adventures, and expect that to obviously ramp up once we're actually out there in 42 days, like having the adventures and the excursions. And then the third type is what you're watching and listening to right now, this like podcast style conversation, which I think can go loop around a lot of different things, you know, gear, setup, where we're going, but also about like nomad life in general.
Yeah, like how we're feeling.
Yeah.
Like how's it going?
How we're feeling, how it's going.
Are there positives? Are there negatives that we're running into? Like
how it's transforming our mindsets, because that's
the big part. Yeah, because I would say, like, for me, I'm in a very high stress type of job, so I am seeing this as a sabbatical of sorts to kind of like be able to reset.
Yeah,
so
definitely is.
Anytime that we've gone on our camping trips, like the one this time, which was like 4 nights, 5 days, well, I guess it's more 4 nights in like a couple of hours, but even so, like able to fully like breathe for the first time, like really like have a slower pace. And all those sort of things. So hoping that this longer trip will allow more of that, and then just naturally reset kind of like our algorithm or our kind of like internal clock. Internal? Whichever
I think like particularly your stress responses.
Yeah.
That's that's what needs to be reset more than anything. And it would not surprise me if most people need some kind of like reset of their stress algorithm or their stress responses, because you know the way we live now in our modern society is not very compatible with the human mind, like the way the human brain evolved and adapted. So I think we're all very, very stressed, which is unfortunate to say so.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing, like I was talking about on our hike the other day, in terms of like doing kind of like those big belly breaths or like the yoga breaths, because like they can really calm down our system.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, back in the day it was like fight or flight. It's like, am I gonna get eaten by this bear? Okay, I need to run, type of thing. But now that same response is happening through work or whatever the case may be. So like you're saying, like really resetting that stress, at least for me, that's what my goal is.
Definitely. And my goal is, I would say I'm not as stressed, but my big goal is just seeing everything that's out there, seeing the country, taking in like more natural beauty, having a more considered, like slower life. And you know, this adventure is going to be grand. There's no one I'd rather be sharing it with than you, babe. I love you. And it starts in 42 days. I guess until then, like I have a rough roadmap of some other videos that I've been working on. There's stuff about like our refrigerator. I mean, that was another thing that we tested out for the first time on this trip. We got a refrigerator. It's called a refrigerator, but we really only use it as a freezer because we have another non-powered cooler, which we use as our refrigerator. So we have like a refrigerator, a powered freezer, and an unpowered refrigerator combo, two different things. And I think it's working really well.
I think it worked really well for this trip, especially since like any other trip where we've done for like 4 nights, the ice would have melted by now and all those sort of things. So just being able to kind of like switch the ice packs between the freezer and our kind of like cooler, and that being able to keep everything cool in the actual cooler itself, like it's been working out really well. Yeah,
and we'll have to do another video on the cooler as well. It's like the 2 different parts of the setup: the bodega powered refrigerator / freezer, well, freezer unit really, how that fits in the sub frunk, and then the oyster cooler, which is, I think most people would look at that and say that is a crazy amount of money to spend on a cooler, but it provides a use case and a value that I don't think you can get out of any other cooler, because it's so small yet it can fit so much food, because it's so efficient, because it doesn't need that much ice and cooling, you know.
And I guess this is one thing just to say across all our videos, like, because Tony just said we're going to do like gear videos and all that sort of stuff. So none of these videos is us saying like you must get this one in order to do this type of lifestyle. No. Because like we know that like we have a certain type of privilege right now to be able to invest in something like an oyster cooler or something like that. But that's not necessarily a requirement to do it. It's just that that's what we're able to do and what makes the most sense for us. So like I just wanted to throw that out there.
Of course. Like there are plenty of ways to get out there and get exploring, and having the best gear and the best setup and whatever is not what's important. It's just us sharing what's worked for us thus far and what we're trying out. So those are coming out. Thinking of what else. It's like stuff with Rivian Connect, how I'm able to set up and do some of my work on the computer in the car. Like I've got to figure out a setup that's basically turn this passenger seat that I'm sitting in here into a mobile office, which is really awesome. And we'll probably share some stuff about our front gating setup, our front kitchen, and other things that we're storing together. How we indexed the different storage areas in this R1S, because the R1S has tons of storage. There's like, I think now there's like 8 unique cavities that you could think of as places where different things can be stored and held, which is awesome.
And we're still dialing that in. Like we said, we're still in kind of like the the trial period before we leave, so we'll have some more, hopefully, footage on like how we got down to the bare essentials of what we're taking and what we kind of are leaving behind as like nice to have, but aren't going to quite make the cut.
And we could also talk about things that survived the upgrade from the Model Y to the Rivian, and also sharing what camping in the Model Y was like.
Yeah, most definitely.
So yeah, that's what our channel's about. That's what we're up to.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell, what we're sharing with ourselves in the future and anyone else who's also watching. I hope that there's like nuggets of value and like wisdom, experience in here that could inform anyone else who's wanting to get out there and become electric nomad adventurers.
Yeah. And I was going to say, because you said nuggets of wisdom, even, we may fail at something, so that also might teach you a lesson as well.
Yeah,
so
certainly.
you may learn what not to do.
I think a big one is decisions around the e-bikes. Decisions around the e-bikes, like,
yeah, we'll take that L for you.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully it's not that big.
No, I mean the bikes are amazing. Yeah, so, but we could have got to a different place sooner. We had trials and tribulations.
Yeah. So I think that's it for this episode. Anything else you want to say to anyone who might be watching, babe?
No, not that I could think of, but hope you enjoyed the video, I guess, because you'll be seeing and hearing more of our voices if you continue to watch our channel.
Yes. And if you made it this far, obviously you enjoyed what we're talking about and you see some value in what we're doing. So why don't you go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, maybe even leave a comment about anything that we said that you had a response to, that you had thoughts about, and
even my driving.
Look forward to your driving or Rivian's driving. When you turn on.
I forgot that it's not Tesla. It doesn't have full, what's it called, the FSD. So I had to get off really quick because I thought I was going to get over. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. But Rivian Highway Assist is, I mean, I guess that's a topic for another video. But thus far, Rivian Highway Assist is comparable to autopilot. Because of the 96,000 miles on our Model Y, I think 80,000 of them, 84,000 of them were on full self-driving.
Yeah.
And then the other 12,000, including our wedding trip, was mostly autopilot. So our wedding trip, we were mostly on autopilot on that long 4-week road trip. And autopilot was great. And thus far, at least when I'm in the driver's seat, I've been enjoying Rivian Highway Assist here and there.
Me too.
But we'll talk about that more in a future video. Thank you again. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment if there's anything thought-provoking that you want to react to. Look forward to seeing you in the comment section below. Peace.